Conference, the steadfast national conference on Christian apologetics and evangelism, where faith meets reason, culture, and community.
Jenna Ellis in the morning on American Family Radio.
I love talking about the things of God because of truth and the biblical worldview.
The U.S. Constitution obligates our government to preserve and protect the rights that our founders recognize come from God, our Creator, not our government. I believe that Scripture in the Bible is very clear that God is the one that raised up each of you, and God has allowed us to be brought here to this specific moment in time.
This is Jenna Ellis in the morning.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, September 17th, and a couple of headlines for you this morning. First, you may have heard that the Georgia Supreme Court has declined to hear Fulton County prosecutor Fani Willis's appeal challenging her disqualification, and so this is a move that could effectively end the Georgia prosecution of President Donald Trump and others, and a lot of you have asked how that affects me. This is what I posted on social media. Fani Willis was rightly disqualified. I don't have a felony conviction and I wasn't disbarred. I agreed simply to tell the truth if when called by the prosecution or defense rather than remain silent. Truth doesn't change, and it's not for or against anyone. Truth is the truth, and I will always tell the truth. My lawyers are reviewing how Willis's disqualification affects me. Stay tuned. Also, prosecutors in Utah have revealed charges against the man accused in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which happened a week ago today. I can't believe that it has already been a week, including a capital murder count. And so that would likely invoke the death penalty if he was convicted of that charge and then moved forward to the death penalty phase. The counts against the alleged killer who appeared in court yesterday, according to the Utah County Attorney's Office, include aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, 2 obstruction of justice counts, 2 witness tampering counts, and a violent offense committed in the presence of a minor. And so as we are all still processing all of this and have reviewed it's just so much of all of the clips and everything that's going on with Charlie Kirk, I want to welcome in Pastor Dean Insera, who is the pastor of City Church in Tallahassee, Florida, who had a wonderful message on Sunday. There were so many pastors that I just love seeing all of these messages. I'm still working through them, actually, because I saw, of course, I attended church at my own church here in Florida. And I listened to Pastor Jack Hibbs of Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, who's going to be on later this week to give some of his thoughts. And, you know, so many great pastors. But Pastor Dean, thanks so much for joining. And I want to get your thoughts overall as we're at the 1 week mark here of Charlie Kirk's senseless murder.
Hey, Jenna, thanks for having me. Yeah, my prayer right now, 1 week in, I agree with you. I cannot believe it's been a week already, is that what we are seeing happen, the stirring, the waking up. You know, I talked about getting our heads out of the sand, you know, that's happening with so many conservative Christians around America. My prayer is that it will last. Like, I think that's an important prayer for believers right now, that what we see happen, like the momentum after such a tragedy, you know, how the Lord is using such an evil act to awaken the church, that it will be something that is not a flash in the pan, or that's not just an emotional reaction. The emotions matter, and we are emotional, but it'll be something that really does bring about a long-term change for the Lord in our society. So that's my big hope right now. And I'm seeing college students and young people who Charlie had such an impact and really almost gave them permission to be bold, because oftentimes they weren't getting it from their churches. They're a part of local churches, but the pastors often just won't go there and won't push that. That they're feeling the responsibility of taking the mantle and going forward.
And that's such a great point, that we can't just simply move on from the gravity of this moment. It should be something that ultimately changes us. And for Christians, it should call us to pursue God more closely. And hopefully for those who are going to church, either back to church for the first time in a long time, or maybe the first time ever, hopefully serves to bring them into a saving knowledge of Christ and to have their life completely changed through the power of the gospel. And so for pastors and for those of us who are Christians, we're all in ministry. That's regardless of your vocation. You have to be a pastor like Pastor Dean full time. You don't have to be working for a Christian ministry like I do. We are all in ministry full time with our work. What is the best way to move forward and not just pick up where Charlie left off and, say, who will pick up the mic and all of those things? I think there's so much work that we should be doing anyway as Christians.
Yes, I love that you said that. We have one of our elders at our church who's a businessman in town likes to say that a defining moment in his life was when he realized he didn't have to get a paycheck from a church in order to have a ministry. So I love that. You just reminding people that they're all people who claim the name of Christ or are in ministry. So I think what it means right now is that we're just, I know intentional can be a buzzword, but sometimes buzzwords are buzzwords because they're true. So I think all the more intentional about being committed to our local churches, about being intentional with our families, the conversations we're having with our children, and that we're looking for any opportunity to talk about things that matter. You talked about how you're about the truth and you're going to tell the truth no matter what. And we need to just to keep pushing back against the narrative out there in our culture that the truth is unloving or that you can't say these things because. It's like, no, because I care. Because first of all, I care about what God thinks, and because I care about you. Like I'm going to be someone who tells the truth. And Charlie was a great model of that, where Charlie listened to people and listened to their questions, and then he unapologetically, without any mincing of words, said, "This is what I believe is true, and this is why it's true." So I just think we need just to reawaken that we're not just living this life, that God has a mission and he expects every single Christian to be on it. And so that's what I hope. And that those that were just kind of dormant or just kind of doing their life and just kind of passive, that they'll see that's not an option right now in the times where we live. Passivity is not the way that we're going to be able to flourish as a society and move things forward. And so that's my hope for people, is that basically it really is that idea of getting our heads out of the sand and seeing that God has a mission. He expects all believers to be on it.
And I love what your social media says, Pastor Dean Insera, which you can follow him on X at Dean Insera. Huge fan of the local church, and that's
yes, absolutely, it's God's design.
Yes, and that's been one of the most remarkable things, especially this past Sunday, to see how so many people were reaching out to their friends or even on social media saying, I think I need to go back to a church. And there was so much encouragement of get involved in your local church. And there are so many people, I think as Christians, we tend to be receiving often so much the benefits of conferences, of podcasts, of even, radio, like what we're doing right now, and then becoming a little bit passive as Christians. And there was a great message that I watched just a few days actually before Charlie Kirk was killed from Vadi Bakum, who was saying, if you guys are all just kind of the conference geeks and you're coming here and everything, you're missing the point. Like, yes, become more educated in the knowledge of God, have these tools and everything, but be part of your local church and support your local pastor, not just, a lot of the celebrities or the podcasters out there or the high profile pastors. And I think there's a real value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I appreciate him saying that message where it really does need to be expressed locally. Yes, we care about what's happening nationally. Yes, we care about our state. But I think where real change really happens is in the local context. You don't want to be somebody who's just getting information, who's just taking in from all over the place, but not actually getting your feet on the ground and going forward with what's really happening. This really is a moment. And I want to just remind our listeners that the things you read about this week about people going back to church, and that really happened. Like, this is not just like internet hype. Like, we really saw people who walked in the door for the first time in years to any kind of church, and they will tell you the reason why when you talk to them is that Charlie's murder motivated them and inspired them to rethink things and to get serious about things. Like, this really is a moment in our country, and the question is, what are we going to do with it? I don't think God just gives us moments randomly, and again, it's still awful. We still need to be praying for Erica and for the kids. It was one of the most horrible things we'll ever witness ever, like in the history of our country. But what now? Like, where do we go forward? And we go forward with saying, okay, we're in a real spiritual battle in this country, and we're either going to really live for Christ and live for the Lord and for the first of principles of the creation order, like marriage and life and liberty, and we're going to make them known to the whole world. And that's really my hope for everyone.
Absolutely. And I wrote a piece in Town Hall that listeners can go and read that's talking about Charlie Kirk and how he lived his faith in action. And that's what our call has always been. If we look at Hebrews 11 and 12 and the great cloud of witnesses that has gone before, and then that should inspire us to also finish our race well. And Charlie finished his race. We grieve because he was too young, but we grieve in the hope of knowing he's living eternally with our Lord and Savior. And now, along with that great cloud of witnesses, he points us to Christ, like current pastors, like you do, like I do every day, along with that great cloud of witnesses, and calls us forward. So let's run with endurance, looking unto Jesus, and finish well. And for people who are asking, for Christians who are asking, okay, what now? What does that mean, actually, to use the rest of my time and opportunity and talents and gifts to finish well? What does that mean for the Christian?
Yeah, I think it means that long game view of the Christian life, that it does take endurance, and that I don't want to be someone who only has emotional reactions to the faith, that the things I react to are important things, but that it creates rootedness in me and grounding and realizing that the Lord doesn't just start a work in us. We're told in Philippians that he takes it to completion. So my hope is that our eyes stay on Christ during all this. One of the things I've been praying for myself and for our church is that in my anger, and I am angry about what happened, I am emotional about what happened, that in my anger, as Ephesians says, I won't sin. Right? So we got to make sure that this whole tragedy, that it makes us more like Jesus, not less. And one of the ways we can be the most like Jesus is stepping into the world like he did and saying, here's what is true, here's what matters. But we have to keep our eyes on Christ. I'm glad you brought the Hebrews chapters, because that's really what it's about. It's like, here's who's gone before us. Here's the faithful believers who have endured. Now let us endure as well. And what's that going to take? Looking to Christ, looking to the good news of the gospel of Christ's death and resurrection, and realizing that life really is about what God says and his approval more than anything else. So my hope is that we'll be a people who are not a flash in the pan, who are not just an overreaction. It's far from that. It's the right reaction. It's the appropriate reaction. Instead, but it would be the wrong reaction if it didn't lead to lasting fruit. And that's my hope for all of us. And I know for a fact that's what Charlie would want. He would want just people to be outraged for a week and then move on. He would want the outrage to lead to fruit bearing that makes people urgent about the times we're in and the times that matter for the Lord.
Absolutely. And, just a few weeks ago, I was at Pastor John MacArthur's memorial, and now he and Charlie are together in heaven in the presence of their Lord and Savior. And both of them, even at that memorial with the full completed life of Pastor John, that encouraged me to finish well. And then looking at how Charlie only had 31 short years encourages me to finish well and to say, I need to keep using every opportunity. And in just the last minute that we have, that also translates into the body politic and saying we need to fight for America because of our Christian faith and our principles. And what does that mean now to continue that fight for conservative values and for our country?
I appreciate you asking that. Jesus didn't just say to be light, he says to be salt as well. So light shines in darkness, but salt is a preserver. It takes care of decay. And we have so much decay right now in our culture. And if we actually do care about fellow human beings, most important, the glory of God, we're going to see the political arena as a place where real human flourishing can be accomplished. So for Christians, we cannot say, I don't want to be political. I don't want to be political. We're done playing that game. One of the reasons why Charlie was so effective is that this generation right now, they are people who actually are living in the results of so much neglect by the generations before them. We're Christians who probably love Jesus, yes, and prayed and served their churches and read the Bible, all of those things, but really oftentimes had their heads in the sand about what's happening in our culture. And before you know it, now these children who are now teenagers, college students who become adults are living in the consequences of that.
And we got to leave it there. Thanks so much, Pastor Dean. We'll be right back.
How about this? Some actual good news on the healthcare front, even as costs just keep skyrocketing. So if you're 65 or older, MediShare now offers MediShare 65 Plus. Call them. You can talk to them about this. A lot of people are taking advantage of this now because even if you have Medicare Parts A and B, you know there are out-of-pocket things, deductibles and copays that just keep going up. And the whole point is to help you by giving you a low, consistent monthly payment that fills in the gaps. In fact, I can tell you how much MediShare 65 Plus is. For example, it's $99 a month up to age 75. It keeps costs under control. That helps with peace of mind. MediShare is trusted, too. It's been around for 30 years, and it's a community of people who help each other. Business owners, retirees, pastors, teachers. People love being part of it. Here's the number you can call now. They are easy to talk to. Call 833-45-BIBLE. That's 833-45-BIBLE. 833-45-BIBLE.
Hey, my name is Wesley Wildman.
And I'm Walker Wildman.
And we're brothers, and our family have been leading tours to the land of the Bible for more than 30 years.
Coming up in March of 2026, we would love for you to join us for something very special, a Footsteps of Paul tour, a journey through Greece.
We'll walk exactly where the Apostle Paul walked, through Athens, ancient Corinth, Philippi, and Thessalonica.
You'll enjoy unforgettable experiences and meaningful fellowship with believers and with Wesley and Walker.
And we'll eat well, laugh a lot, and yes, eat well again. And most importantly, we will grow in our faith as the Bible comes alive before your eyes. You'll get to see the very things that we read about or that your pastor talks about in church.
The Footsteps of Paul tour is March 17th through the 24th, 2026.
Register today at wildmangroup.com.
That's wildmangroup.com. We can't wait to see you there.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes. Stand by for news and commentary next. Disturbing reports from the FBI that the Biden administration weaponized the FBI to target conservatives. Senator Chuck Grassley, the Republican from Iowa, says the FBI ran a project called Arctic Freeze. The investigations targeted President Trump and 92 conservative groups, including Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk. Also, FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed that Christians have faced attacks across the nation. Patel says they're conducting 5 anti-Catholic hate crime investigations in major cities: Louisville, Houston, Nashville, Richmond, and Kansas City. The FBI reports at least 60 anti-Catholic hate crime incidents also being probed. This is a troubling discovery. No doubt, under the previous administration, people of faith were singled out for persecution by radical Democrats. As Patel told the Senate, any attacks against any faith will not be tolerated. Be sure to read my book, Twilight's Last Gleaming: Can America Be Saved? Available at your favorite bookstore.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back, and continuing the conversation, turning to where we go from here in terms of fighting for America, fighting for a more perfect union, fighting for conservative policy because it is derived from the Judeo-Christian founding, because if truth matters, then there is a measurable difference between right and wrong, good and evil, and governments are instituted among men to ensure that our rights that are pre-political, that are given by God, are protected by our government, and that we can freely exercise those rights without fear of either the government or each other. And there was a very interesting poll that Rasmussen Reports did, and Mark Mitchell, who is the COO of Rasmussen, posted this on social media just a few hours ago. Things are changing fast. Fears of escalating political violence are the most unifying thing I think we've ever polled on. We're in a new paradigm. So Mark Mitchell joins me now. Tell me about this poll, because I think conservatives have been a little bit hesitant to acknowledge that there is genuinely a fear of more political violence. Yes, that's not going to change how bold we are, how much we stand up, all of those things, but we need to address that.
Well, the weird thing is, and great to be here again, the weird thing is that Democrats are actually a little bit more very concerned about political violence than the right is, and that's because they've been gaslit for so long that the right wing are violent extremists. And so to step back, I think where we're at here is at the end of a fourth turning. We've had a super cycle of decaying institutional trust, and we've seen over and over that all of these systems have just completely failed Americans who want to live a normal, free, like you said, Judeo-Christian life with their families in a community that they recognize. And that's becoming increasingly clear that there's no easy fixes here. And even religion, all of these institutions that have been there to, support us have kind of been corrupted. I mean, my own Methodist religion that I grew up in, mainline Methodism, now openly supports transgenderism for children, and I guess by proxy, the ideologies that come along with it. But what you see on Twitter now and what you see in social media and even on places like Fox News is an increasing unwillingness to keep any of that bottled anymore. And I don't call it hate. I think there's an aspect of intolerance or resolve. And that's the kind of thing that ends the fourth turning when people actually decide to step up society itself and fix these problems. But this Charlie Kirk thing was absolutely wild. How concerned are you about political violence in America? 69% very concerned, 21% somewhat. So that's 90%. And it's 10-1. People are concerned. Only 1% not at all concerned. And like I said, Democrats, 74% very concerned. And then also 85% think that there's going to be more political violence in the next few months. 48% very likely, including 55% of Democrats very likely. So if you know polling, you never get to a 100% number. Getting above 70% is really rare. Getting above 80% is extremely rare. And this is essentially almost everybody. I mean, I think the people who probably said no here weren't listening to the poll. So this is our new reality. People saw this imagery. It's very powerful imagery, and it woke them up. And I think already things are starting to change. We had really high right direction polling for all of Trump's second term, the records over our 20 years of history. It hasn't dipped below 40% once. In fact, it's mostly been between 45% and 50%. But just in the last 3 days, it's plunged down to 40%, driven by a massive drop in Republicans and independents. So I think it's a gut punch, and people are looking around and saying, well, maybe I really don't understand this country that I'm living in.
Wow. And that is incredible that it's that high on both sides, but I think for vastly different reasons. And also for vastly different views of where the political violence is coming from. I mean, we as conservatives see it as ideologically driven. We see the facts. We see all of the trans violence in just the last week, but the last few months, where the left has this perception of, the red hat, MAGA monster, basically, that's not grounded in reality. We're driving toward the same fear, but for a vastly different conclusion, which must mean then, Mark Mitchell, that the solutions that are proposed by both sides are vastly different, but in kind of a similar way. When we look at Attorney General Pam Bondi, I'm going to be very, very honest with my audience, as I always am. I did not agree with what she said on hate speech. I think that can be used by the left to target conservatives, like they have been for the duration of the Biden administration and even prior to that. So where do we go from here in terms of what the solutions are, and have you done any polling or views on what both sides think?
Yeah. Well, let me first say about hate speech. I think it's in the past been a political football that people don't care about anymore. We polled on the Irina Zarutska murder, and even though by a massive 60% to 20% margin, people want Carlos Brown executed, they don't even call that a hate crime by more than 40%. So, wow. But yeah, I think what I see. Let me first say this: we had a Trump quote, and we polled on it. It's long past time for all Americans in the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequences of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. 86% agree, 58% strongly, 53% of Democrats strongly agree with that Trump quote. And so you see all these insane people on TikTok and Reddit calling for the death of conservatives and dehumanizing Charlie Kirk. Those are not the majority of Democrats. I think the majority of Democrats don't like the idea that there is all this violent rhetoric. But what you start to see being laid out before you is on the right, there's this relative ideological uniformity on most things that matter, like the border, reforming our institutions, reordering the economy to work for the middle class. But the problem is that the leadership structure, there's a major rift, and there's going to be a reckoning there because most Republicans aren't willing to take action, and I think don't really fundamentally support the MAGA movement, and that's going to come to a head. And then on the Democrat side, you have across the board ubiquitously held beliefs in leadership and all of their information dissemination. Like it all reinforces the most radical thing. But then their voters, I think, are relatively conflicted right now. And we've asked questions before, like, do you think that the murder of the United Healthcare CEO by Luigi Mangione was understandable? And 34% of Democrats agree, so not all of them. I mean, that's crazy, but it's not all of them. So they're split. And I think that there's maybe going to be a reckoning there because it looks like the media is not going to stop. All of these algorithms that are elevating the absolutely most inflammatory takes, the hidden influences that drive things like Reddit and TikTok and Discord and all of the things that people see on Twitch, that's got to change, and I think society will demand it now. And I think they're also going to start increasingly looking at the Trump administration and ask really tough questions. Like, I think Trump's leading well and saying the right things, but let's say it this way: 92% or 92 conservative organizations were targeted by the Chris Wray FBI, and whistleblowers didn't come out until the Trump administration. And we've had no confirmation that any of these agencies have had really a major cleanup whatsoever. And we should have, quite frankly, probably avoided this Charlie Kirk assassination because Trump talked about Antifa being a domestic terrorist organization 5 years ago. Why wasn't that numero uno on the list of priorities at the FBI to reorder the organization into actual threats and not grandmas who stepped foot on the Capitol steps? So I think that institutional trust was the reason that Trump got elected, the absolute lack of it. And we haven't seen the steps of rectification that have to go in to convince Americans that these institutions are now trustworthy. We had 53% agreeing that the FBI was Joe Biden's personal Gestapo, just putting Kash Patel at the head of it. And unfortunately, I guess, like, looking at what happened in Salt Lake City, I was not impressed with the way that the FBI is handling this, and across the board. I think voters are still being let down and need to demand more. The Republicans have a huge opportunity here now. There's going to be tens of thousands of new registrants signing up at Charlie Kirk vigils across the country, and the Republicans need to give them a reason to vote for them, and it needs to be major transformational things because Americans are desperate.
And I'm speaking with Mark Mitchell, COO of Rasmussen Reports, and that distrust or just lack of confidence in institutions that should be serving to protect communities, to have solutions, the lack of trust, frankly, in the Republican Party overall. I mean, I think, you'd be able to speak to this in terms of your polling, but I think what I'm seeing, at least just from an anecdotal social media standpoint, and people I've interviewed, is that there's a lot more trust in President Trump than there is necessarily in specific members of his administration or specific agencies. And it's been really remarkable to see with this investigation how little trust, even with Kash Patel being at the head of the FBI, that so many conservatives still distrust what they call the narrative. And it's almost like we don't anymore trust what anyone is telling us. It's like they have to literally go and prove that it's raining outside. Like, we're not going to trust you. We're not going to go out and get our umbrellas. You're going to have to prove it to us before we're willing to go along with this again. And there's some wisdom in that. I mean, fool me once, shame on you kind of thing. Fool me twice, shame on me. But how does this play into the overall solution making if we have kind of a very weak Congress that isn't codifying anything with Trump? You have the Democrats who just, their knee-jerk reaction is to go for more gun control, which isn't going to solve anything.
Right.
And then you have, the FBI, but nobody's really, other than the churches, the good churches, nobody's really fundamentally addressing the ideology.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the problem. Now, I don't think your average voter has a sophisticated enough view to understand what they really want to see. And I also think that if you ask about, we've done this, asking about Trump's individual cabinet members, and you get pretty confusing results. Mostly people don't know who they are, and they're kind to people who they don't understand, and so they usually wind up having somewhat favorable marks, especially among Republicans. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Americans don't want to see rapid change. Like, you and I have seen an organization that was radicalized, rapidly transformed, and what did it take? Well, it took Elon Musk firing 80% of Twitter and making all of the algorithms open source. That's the kind of thing that restores trust in institutions, and you have to say that we have not seen it. Now, kind of the way I'll address the second part of your question is that a lot of people don't talk about this. A lot of people like the copium, and they want to pat themselves on the back with the fact that they say that the 18 to 29-year-old generation is moving to the right, that Republican registration numbers are outstripping Democrats, that the Democrat Party favorability rating is in the tank. It's not. It's only slightly less than Republicans. That was fake polling that people quote. The problem is that according to our polling, Trump only got 58% of his support from Republicans. That means everybody else was independents or crossover Democrats. And as far as I know, those people were behind Trump's agenda. They wanted people deported. They wanted the border closed. They wanted tariffs. They wanted people to be tough on China. They don't want to go to war in a Eurasian mud field over NATO expansionism, right? Like, that's why these people voted, not because of Republicans. And I think Republicans are very complacently just doing the Washington, D.C. thing. And I think deep down, a lot of them know, well, Trump will come and go, and I'll still be here playing my old game. But I'm telling you, your old game's not going to work anymore. We're coming to an end. And are you going to take aggressive action to fix it, or are we going to devolve into a civil war or revolution? I don't want to be inflammatory, but we have a 17% youth unemployment rate that's one hard landing away from 25%. We have still a major price issue. We have 43% of Americans who think a civil war is likely in the next few years. And then we have now massive fears of political violence on both sides. So it's not a good situation when what's probably happening in D.C. right now is that the same special interests and the same legislators are sitting in the same closed doors putting together some D.C. abortion that's going to be, the next reconciliation bill with the kind of political capital and news cycle coverage that the Republicans have right now. The Democrats probably would have gone nuclear and forced through major Republic-changing legislation right now. And where are Mike Johnson and John Thune? Why don't they come out and tell America what the plan is? Because I'll tell you, the numbers are bad on Congress. 60% of Republicans think that Republicans in Congress aren't fulfilling Trump's mandate. Only 38% of Trump voters have a very favorable impression of Republicans in Congress. These are not good marks. So, like you said, they've codified nothing. Their MIA, the 119th Congress, has passed hardly anything. They can't even get Trump's how long did they deliberate over going nuclear over judicial confirmations? They literally are. They live in an insulated bubble. They don't understand the temperature of the populace right now. The populace was pretty elate when Trump got into office, but that was all just taken away. Again, right direction polling is plunging, and Trump's numbers aren't changing. His job approval rating is the same thing. The problem is that I think people will be demoralized and just not show up in November 26. Already we have Democrats up on the generic ballot. The last time we polled it, it was Democrat +4. that means they're probably going to take the House. And again, people with copium will say, oh, well, the Republicans are just going to redistrict those seats. Well, that's like Plan C because Plan A and Plan B failed. Well, we have time for Plan A and Plan B. Like win the right way instead of the non-democratic ways. And I don't want to black pill, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Wow. And I am so frustrated as someone who loves this country, who wants to see actual solutions, who wants to see the conservatives go nuclear, and to follow Trump's example of saying, this is the second term, we gotta push forward with our agenda. To think that in the midst of this type of not just news cycle but moment in this country, that it's actually possible that the Democrats could retake the House with that type of ideology. Because, like I said, during Trump versus Harris, this isn't about the person. It's about the worldview. It is about what they stand for, the direction of this nation. And to think that that's even possible, it is so astoundingly frustrating. And so do you attribute that more because, Democrats are going to turn out the vote more, or is it because conservatives and Republicans are just so frustrated that we're not going to turn out, or something else?
Well, if the election were held tomorrow, I think Democrats would win a majority in Congress. I'm not sure what happens in the Senate. But the problem is that this stuff is getting tougher and tougher to predict because there are all of these non-political factors that might happen between now and November 26th. There's positive things. Maybe there's an economic boom and people are happy, and maybe the Republicans push through good legislation. That could happen, maybe. And then maybe they crack down on Act Blue. That would be massive. Maybe there's election integrity reform, or Trump codifies, or Trump signs executive orders that, do away with mail-in ballots, these kind of things. But then there also could be an economic downturn. There could be more political violence. There could be the Democrats filling their leadership vacuum with somebody charismatic. There's so many things that could happen between now and then. And we have another debt ceiling fight coming up, I guess. But what I'll tell you is that the Democrats are in disarray, but yet they also have a machine that wants one thing, and that's power and to win, and they're very good at it. And people say, look, the RNC is outraising the DNC 3-1. Well, yeah, but Act Blue is still funneling in $400 million a quarter, and they're going to probably deploy $2.5 billion in this midterm cycle. And they have high propensity voters that will turn out whether they're demoralized or not. They have get out the vote efforts that have been finely honed, whereas the Republicans are relying on grassroots organizations. And I've heard this from people on the ground. Well, where are people in the Jack Ciattarelli race? Why is the RNC losing over and over again in these special elections? Why is the DNC spending significant amounts of ad spend in an Iowa State Senate race when the RNC is nowhere to be found? And that's because the Democrat machine is built to win. The Republican machine is built to funnel rich people's donor money into the consulting class and maintain the status quo. And I think it was easy to say this now and harder to say it before, but I think the Trump movement is, and again, I don't want to doom. I think that Trump can fix a lot of things. Hopefully there's a lot of actions they plan to take. I know that his administration is talking more and more aggressively, especially with the stuff that Steve Miller and J.D. Vance are talking about just in the last couple of days. But our problems are so big, and there will come a realization at some point, I think, for most Americans that it's not going to be fixable within. That Washington, D.C. is too entrenched, too focused on the special interests, too plugged into the major corporations. Just think about the sheer pressure that people in the Trump administration must go through when they want to change anything economically. All of these rich and powerful multi-billionaires screaming at them about how it's going to affect the economy and how all these people are going to be out of a job. This is $100 trillion grift, and it does not want to change. And it's also not working for the best interest of most Americans now. And it's taken us a while to get to this point. And I don't think we're out of other people's money yet, but our debt is massively spiraling. The interest of the debt alone is ridiculous. And we also have a coming demographic collapse. So the writing is on the wall as far as where we're going unless these issues get fixed. And I think it's tough things. Like we spend 21% of our GDP on healthcare, most of which goes to managing chronic disease with ridiculous overdiagnosis and overspending. And we could probably cut 10% of that, or half of it, 10% of our GDP, by refocusing our healthcare on outcomes-based and health focus and functional medicine. And that's tough to do because our healthcare system is a gimme that. It's definitely a luxury that people expect, but we can't afford it anymore. It's one of the reasons we're completely bankrupt. So there's really hard decisions like that coming, and maybe they're coming in 5 or 10 or 15 years. But history tells us we're due. Like the fourth turning's going to end in the next 5 or 10 years. I don't know if that's a war. I don't know if you have the NATO chief right now talking about a two-front war with China and Russia and expanding hospital beds over the next 6 months in France for wounded soldiers, between 10 and 50,000 beds. Like, why are these discussions happening now? It's really tough.
Mark Mitchell, yeah, we gotta leave it here, but this is a true wake-up call, and I so appreciate you bringing home the point that this isn't just about passion and anger for this moment in time. This is about a serious look at where we are headed, because wasn't that Trump's initial thing in 2015? We got to be the outsider. We got to make sure to push this through. So we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
God is at work, and He's calling His people to rise in truth. Truth Rising is a powerful new documentary from Focus on the Family and the Colson Center. See how ordinary Christians choose courage in a culture that needs truth. Watch Truth Rising today and find out how you can become an agent of restoration and hope. Visit truthrising.com today. That's truthrising.com.
Exploring Missions with Pastors Bert and Nathan Harper.
When I became a Christian believer, I felt that God was calling me to go to North India as a witness.
We focus on the most vulnerable in the Metro Atlanta area.
Operation Care International is started in Dallas, and now we have partnered with 52 countries.
Exploring Missions explores missions. Find it on the podcast page at afr.net.
This is Abraham Hamilton III with AFR, and we're sending Bibles. Here's Michael with Bible League International.
Persecuted believers around the world, they're praying for your help today. Pastor Abanos faithfully shares the gospel with indigenous tribes in his native Bangladesh, but not without harsh opposition. Recently, following a baptism ceremony, armed radicals tortured Abanos and other pastors, but they take to heart what Jesus says in Matthew 5, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you.
Beaten, cast out. It's so easy to hate people that do this to you. He said, no, I love them.
Persecuted believers around the world, they're not asking for your pity. They're praying for the precious Word of God to endure. And at $5 a Bible, will you consider a single gift of $100 for $20 or $1 a day? That's $30 a month, providing 72 Bibles over the next year. Pray about it and call 800-YES-WORD, 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 or give it sendbiblesnow.org, sendbiblesnow.org.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
Every day I speak with people who are worried and are feeling a lot of pressure because of credit card debt. That's why I'm very proud of what we do at Trinity. We just help. We give people the support they need, along with a real plan to become debt-free. Credit card bills are consolidated into a single monthly payment that is much less than what they were paying before. Most of our members end up saving thousands and even may improve their credit scores by as much as 200 points. I know from the bottom of my heart that I'm making a difference in the lives of the people we help. It just makes me really happy.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Julie, and I'm a Trinity counselor. Call me and become debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. Well, if you are like me, kind of, frustrated at hearing some of those polling numbers, seeing, kind of what is the lack of action on Capitol Hill over this last year, but especially in a lack of real plan from our leaders like Speaker Mike Johnson, Leader John Thune. Well, let's ask someone who is at Capitol Hill, Representative Marlin Stutzman from the great state of Indiana, who I know is a very sincere Christian whose response, like all of ours, to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it's an incredibly profound sadness. And Congressman, I so appreciate you joining this morning. And, to follow up with the question that my last guest asked, who's the COO of Rasmussen Reports, to say that if the election were held right now, Democrats would probably take back the House. That frustrates me. That actually makes me angry to think that the Republican Party on Capitol Hill is doing so little in terms of codifying Trump's executive orders, in terms of actually doing what matters and providing the agenda, fulfilling Trump's mandate, that we have no plan or strategy we'd actually lose. What is your response to that?
Well, good morning, Jenna. Great to be with you. I think part of this is, I guess, first of all, the election's not today. And it's the Trump policies that are still being, they're going to have an effect over the next year and a couple of months, whether it's the Trump tax cuts, whether it's the trade policies. There's no doubt, and I put a lot of blame on the Federal Reserve on interest rates. And while I don't think that, we should have low interest rates to just encourage more debt and borrowing, I do blame the Federal Reserve for being too slow to react, where we have an economy that it's flat for Main Street. The stock market may be at all-time highs because of anticipation of new technology and and a variety of other things. But, you go to Main Street and talk with, folks, cost of life because of inflation over the past 5 years has just gone up. And, whether it's your food cost, your utility cost, insurance costs, buying an auto anymore, a car loan. I was talking with some folks from Toyota yesterday, and the cost of a new vehicle in the last 5 years has gone up over 38%. And they're very concerned about this. And so, I think Republican policies, it's coming. And that's why we wanted to get the Working Family Tax Cut Act passed when we did. So that way it would give time to the economy to react and to take that into consideration. There's some good signs, but I think that the interest rates are what really holds people back. I mean, I understand the frustration, but I do think that by the time we get to the election next year, that the economy will be reacting better to Republican and Trump policies than what we're seeing today, where we're still recovering from the Biden era.
Yeah, and and Congressman, I think that's definitely accurate. That a lot of people are, still frustrated with the economy, interest rates, some of those things. But in the last week of what we've seen with this wasn't just political violence. I mean, this was the martyrdom of a Christian who was simply professing his faith. I mean, some of these things and these talking points from Capitol Hill, from the speaker and all that, just really aren't speaking to my heart, and are not speaking to the heart of the people. And I don't see Congress right now and the Christians like Mike Johnson, saying, here's the plan, here is how we move forward as a country. That's what I want to see. I want to see leaders like J.D. Vance going out on Charlie's podcast and having the humility to say, he makes me want to be a better husband and father. That spoke, I think, to the pulse of what conservatives and Christians are feeling right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, my thought went to Proverbs 14, where, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. And Charlie's assassination is just heart-wrenching, and it's a very dark day for America. My son, who's actually a TPUSA chapter president at Liberty University, told me, he's like, Dad, this is my 9/11. I mean, we all remember how we felt on 9/11, but it's different from 9/11. 9/11 was an attack from the outside that came from jihadists in the Middle East. This is an attack on the inside. And here, Jenna, this is where I think we should be, the work that's going to be done. In fact, I just saw a report just a little bit ago that Senator Grassley is going to release some files today that shows that this is a broader network on the dark web that, we're seeing sinful actions that are radicalizing our young people. I mean, you can't tell me that, this assassin, what appears to have been raised in a Christian home, was radicalized to drive 3 hours to assassinate somebody he disagreed with. This just doesn't, that's not normal. That is very radical. And I'm afraid that there are more people like him who would do the same thing if they had the opportunity. And that's what we need to focus on. I mean, I agree, with J.D. Vance, I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. I mean, my heart breaks for the parents of the assassin, and I don't know we don't know what happened, but it should just remind all of us as parents that we've got to be paying attention to what our kids are doing and who they're talking to. And especially when it comes to the gaming world and the online world, it is so easy for them to get sucked into these dark places. And it's not just Americans that are trying to radicalize our kids. It's, the Chinese, the Russians, there's other nefarious actors around the world. That's the one thing about the internet. It gives the rest of the world access to our kids. That's why TikTok is such an important piece to who controls TikTok. These algorithms that are on social media know how to target people. And if all of a sudden they become vulnerable, they can get sucked in so quickly. And so we need a spiritual renewal in this country more than ever. We talk about physical health. Yes. We talk about mental health. Absolutely. We need to talk about the spiritual health of America. And while I believe that Charlie's death is going to bring a revival, there's also the evil forces that are still going to go after many Americans, trying to deceive them into thinking that, good is the problem rather than evil being the problem.
Right. And I'm speaking with Congressman Marlin Stutzman in just the last 2 minutes we have. So, we have Pam Bondi coming out talking about hate speech, which is, I think, totally the wrong message. But then you also have Congress that's sitting on repealing the FACE Act, which actually went to target conservatives. And so, where are we at with actual solutions?
Well, Speaker Johnson, again, I sat with him on the floor the day of the assassination, and his job just got tremendously harder. And I told him, I said, I am praying for you. And he knows the gravity of this. Our pastor preached on Nehemiah 6 a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, where Nehemiah is rebuilding the wall. And all of a sudden you have these political opponents that are trying to distract him and cause him to not do the job that God called him to do. And Speaker Johnson and I, we were talking about that, how we have to stay focused on the job that God's called us to do. And to move Congress, it takes time, but it's coming. I know it's coming because, Kash Patel is giving information to Congress. He was in front of committee yesterday, and he's going to be in front of Jim Jordan's committee today. And as we know more, that's the thing, Jenna, is we don't live in those dark spaces as Christians. We shouldn't. And so it's hard to even know what's going on in some of those places. But that's why it's important for us, for our law enforcement, for the FBI, now with leadership that we can trust. Whether it's Dan Bongino or Kash Patel, they're the ones that are going to bring this information to Congress, and then now Congress can then respond accordingly. But it's going to take a little bit of time. But it's just heartbreaking and so frustrating that this is actually where we're at. But I'm glad we have righteous leaders that we can now face and address these problems.
Well, I appreciate you being one of them on Capitol Hill. We're praying for you. We're praying for Speaker Johnson. And my hope is that there will be action on this, and it won't just be, putting it down the road and, saying, well, just wait. But thanks so much, Representative Stutzman. You can always reach me and my team, Jenna at afr.net.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast